Retraining Pain here. For those that don't know me, my name's Brian. I'm an ex-12-time Ironman, been to 3 world championships or qualified, got way out of shape. I've lost close to 50 pounds and now I'm trying to get back into shape. And this is my vlog, and the vlog's kind of a little bit about getting back in shape and then, some musings, let's say, that sort of thing. So I just got back from my bike ride. I rode from Newport, Balboa Island out to Laguna Beach. Good ride. The only thing about those rides is that there's, aside from a lot of cars, but there's really good bike lanes. When you start getting into the town and the city, the traffic is really congested and you're stopping at lights and then you're starting up and stop and start. So it definitely affects your average speed. I will say that it was a great ride in that my legs were getting sore because I was pushing up hills, and I actually started to feel like a bit of a real cyclist. And on today's ride, I took my camera, my iPhone, I attached it to my bike, and I did, videoed it the entire way, or at least most of the way. I guess the camera stopped for whatever reason for a period of time. And so I have it all now, the whole ride, which either you've seen it already or I'll show it to you later after this video. I was thinking about this morning, I was going through some of the videos that I have over the years on YouTube. There's about 180 of them. And I'm scrolling down, and then I come across some of the old videos of Triathlon Manitoba and the first Ironman, the Ironman Canada that I did in 1987, and, the triathlons back then. And it got me thinking that the first Ironman was in 1978. The first half Ironman I ever did was 1986. And I was just reminiscing because back in 86, we were pioneers. As a matter of fact, it wasn't like, I'm from Manitoba. There was no national sports body at that time or provincial sports body. And in fact, I was kind of, I would say that I was one of the early people in triathlons because I was vice president of Triathlon Manitoba, and I was also vice president of Triathlon Canada. And my responsibility at Triathlon Manitoba was to do all the applications and get us accepted into the Manitoba Sports Fed, which would allow us to have an executive director and some funding and things like that. And so that's what happened, and that's what we did. And we were the first organization sport in a long time to get accepted. And then with Ironman Canada, I worked with a group of people, one guy, Les McDonald, an older guy, who helped get the sport into Triathlon Canada, which became the ITU, International Triathlon. Anyway, the situation is we got it into the Sports Fed provincial, we got it as a national, and then as an international. And then from there, there was the Olympics, it got into the Olympics and all the rest of it. But I was thinking about those early triathlons and what they were like, because I started going through some of the video that I had. And, for most of them, like the first half Ironman, because they didn't have sprints or Olympic distance or anything like that. That stuff didn't exist. There was either the Ironman or a half Ironman. And the first one that I did was called the Tin Man. There was the Ironman brand, but it wasn't like it is now. And I think Valerie Silk, she was a person that had Ironman Kona, and then she licensed it to like other people and stuff like that. So it was still well done, but it wasn't like it is today as a big corporation. Back then, it was super grassroots. I remember the races. The one thing I will say is back in when I started in 1986, which however many years ago was that, 40 years ago, I did my first triathlon. And 39 years ago, after I did the half, I did a full Ironman the following year. And then I did Kona. I got into Kona on a lottery. So I've done Kona twice, once qualified in my 40s and once on a lottery. That's where they pick your name out of a hat. And it was actually worked out great because we got married that year. And I did Kona and we made that a honeymoon slash race. So anyway, back to what I was referring to. So it was really grassroots, and in fact, even though I was applying to get us into the sports fed and all that sort of stuff, I thought to myself, you know what, it's kind of a little bit of a racket. We're really just going after free money because the sport, people were into it and it was supporting itself. People, there was guys doing races and there was guys, uh, you know, coaching, and there was guys that were doing the races and just paying the fees. And back then what was really interesting was, as I mentioned, it was grassroots. There wasn't we would do a half and it would be 53 people would be in the race. And back then we didn't know about nutrition, we didn't know about training, we didn't know about anything. And it was basically just get out there, gut it out, and really hope that you finished. And when you did finish, you were very exhausted, but you got to know everyone as well. It was like a small group. We all did it. And even I explained to people there was nothing that was roped off like there is now. And when the transition areas, you would have, your girlfriend or, your wife or whatever would be right beside you when you go to get your bike. They would be handing you your helmet and whatever you needed to put on. It wasn't like they were roped off. And then in the races themselves, nobody really, we wore bathing suits like, those little swim shorts. We didn't wear shirts. It was pretty much just these little, Speedos and a pair of glasses. That was it. And it was just a cool group. And when I was looking at all these videos, I was like, oh yeah, I remember so-and-so and I remember so-and-so. And it's what I find interesting is some of those people became really good friends, even to this day. And I remember so much. It was such a rich, rich period of time. And what I found was I did triathlons, in when I was younger. So I guess 86, I would have been about 19. And so I did that. And then I did 3 Ironman. I did Canada the following year. I did Kona, and then I did Canada again. And then at that point, I took a 16-year break. I kind of built a career and just went into working and got out of shape and got fat. This is a common thread in my life. And then I decided I don't know, I was like 42-ish and I was out of shape. And I remember having drinks, and one of the guys I worked with, I was telling him, yeah, I could still do an Ironman, because in my head I felt I could. And he looked at me and he said, yeah, right. And it was that moment that just twigged me. And it was like, I'm going to show you, man. I'm going to show you. I think that, and then I started getting into shape. And this time I got into really, really, really good shape. And I trained for probably a good solid 3 years doing, anywhere from 16 to 20 hours a week of training. I remember one year I did 26 113-mile plus bike rides in a year. And I live in Ontario, Canada, where I was bundled up on many of these rides. There was still snow on the ground, but the road. So I was pretty insane. And I managed to, in that case, qualify for Kona and do, really well. And that's kind of, I look at it and I go, Last time I did Kona was 2010. It feels like yesterday, and now, it's 15 years later, and it's like almost mirrored to when I got out of it when I was younger, and I went 16 years before I got back into it. And now I'm not saying I'm getting back into it, because I don't necessarily see that, but I definitely want to get back into shape. And I actually question whether or not I can get in shape based on what I'm seeing now. However, I see other people that I did triathlons with that are 60 years old, and they're just rocking it, and some are even doing better. Getting back to watching this video, the one thing I noticed when I got back into triathlons the second time around was that the races had changed, the technology had changed. One of the things that was made us different in the beginning when we first were the pioneers was we were the ones that there was cyclists, and they were very traditional. They had traditional bikes. They, were very strict in what they did. And they were also very aloof. And I know with cyclists, I don't know if it's like that now, but back then it was like they were hyper competitive and a little snooty to each other and just snooty in general. And when triathlon came on the scene, triathletes as now, they're constantly pushing technology. So we would have, our bikes would be a little bit different geometry on the bike, and then we came up with the aero bar designs, and the disc wheels were some of the things that, and I even have on one of my bikes, I have a Centurion, a Dave Scott Centurion, and it's got a kind of an oval on the front sprocket. And there's just, a whole bunch of things that if there was anything that was potentially new out there, triathletes were the ones to get it. And I know when we would do training and you would see, cyclists, they weren't too keen on us, and we were a little bit different. But the feeling and sense of camaraderie that I felt back then, like when it was a race and in training and all that, from the very, very early days to when 16 years later, I came back, in my 40s, it was like things had changed, the bikes had changed, all the stuff had changed. But the one thing that didn't change was the energy and the people. It wasn't like it went from this grassroots, really camaraderie, help, really, we really encouraged each other and really had a sense of bonding. And it's like we weren't competing with each other. And even at the guys who were at the elite level, if, they were competing, but they were friends, you know what I mean? And so then when I came back, it was just the same energy, like nothing changed. And when I look at it, everyone that I know who goes into like triathlon, long course for sure, like Ironman stuff, all of us had some sort of cross to bear, or I always say, if you do one Ironman, I call that a bucket list. But if you do more than one, it just means you have issues. And so there's so many people, you meet them, they're either the overachievers, or they had some sort of drug or alcohol or some, overcoming stuff is a big one, having that personality. But everybody, it's just the same. The energy is the same. And I know, and it's so supportive. And the only thing that changed was the faces. That's what I said. You know what? Everything is the same except the faces are different. And when I was watching these videos this morning, it really got me thinking back to those days and all the people that I met and the fun we had. And it was just a wonderful time. So I just wanted to share that with you about the old starting, and then getting to to where it is today. So anyway, I'm on my journey. I had a good bike ride, and yeah, onward and upward, retraining pain.